Hey guys, this is Rybun. I'm back from my break. I just wanted to wrap up this guide because I never got the chance to before. The reason I haven't been uploading videos is I was trying to think about how to do this video and what other videos I wanted to make. So far I haven't really come up with anything in general, but I decided that I should finish up the series because it's been a while since the last video came out. So here we are on the Ranger, and this is right after our last run. Got all this money in ore from the last run. We're gonna go ahead and decide what we want here. As you can see, we're missing tier 4 and 5, which sucks, but we still got some passive upgrades to get. I really want these twin arrows upgrades though, so let's go ahead and check out my town instead real quick. These upgrades seem really cheap. Chapel 2 is huge. Chapel 4 is the biggest part. We're gonna upgrade this just so we can get skills up another level. I think this is always your best bet for gaining significant progression. Guild Hall is just incredibly huge. Next we're gonna go Fountain 2 because that is my other favorite upgrade. Chapel 2 is great for permanent buffs, so we'll grab that as well. I'm still not grabbing Ore Trader because it's not too efficient right now. Ore Trader is great, but the main reason you use Ore Trader is to speed up these upgrades and stuff like that. Once I get further into these, the progression of NG, I probably will buy Ore Traders and level it up to speed up the progression of my town. Now we revisit the skill guy. As always, the most important thing is your primary, unless you're playing a skill-based class, which usually doesn't matter too much until you get access to drinks. Next important thing is usually ultimate passive. These are almost always one of the biggest things your character has. Grab that, and as I said before, I like running passives on this character, so this is pretty much all I care about. So that's it for skills in our town currently. Now we have Fountain 2, which means we have access to all of these. My presets don't come over from my other things, but presets are really nice because you can figure out what you like and then go with it. I would say at this point in the game you're gonna start running Fountain. Get all the smith stuff. So let's get into Chapel. We'll talk about Chapel really quick because that's a big part of progression. So there's actually more buffs down here. You can't see them, but it tells you what they do. Passive Defender in general is the best one here because decreasing damage taken means you're gonna die less. As you get further into the game, damage becomes much larger, and what ends up happening is you don't want damage dealt as much as reducing the damage you take. So increasing your damage dealt by 25% or decreasing or increasing your skills damage by 25% is nowhere near as good as Passive Defender most of the time. If you are running stuff where you are almost sure you won't die, then you can grab either of these based on what you're doing. Blessing of Might and Blessing of Intellect are both pretty good. It depends on what you're running, but your damage kind of varies a bunch. As you'll see right now, I have a total of I have a total of 18 physical damage. However, there's a drink called Incendiary Demise. It's a tier 3 drink that you get later on. And it allows you to deal an extra 40 magical damage on your primary. So if you're doing this 40 extra magical damage piercing is what you want because it's better. If you're having issues with mana regen, you can grab mana regen here. Health regen doesn't really do much in most cases. The only case where I could see this being possibly somewhat viable is if you're running Priest, because he has a passive that increases the effect of everything related to health. And Blessing of Might, I'd say almost no one runs this because either you're using skills which do magic damage, or you're going to be running Incendiary Demise, which also does significant magic damage. If you get stuff like Judgment and stuff though, you will have a fair amount of physical damage, which could be an argument for Blessing of Might, depending on what you're playing. Down here we've got symbols. Pretty much there's, I would say, only 2 that are viable down here. Decreases mana cost to your skills looks great, but there's a reason you won't want that if you're going a skill build, and we'll get into that later. Returns damage to the attacker when hit. Yet again, you don't want to get hit, so this one doesn't really do too much for you. Gain 2.5% lifesteal on primary attack is huge. There's an item that gives you this. It's a blue item, and it gives you 2.5% lifesteal, and it makes a huge difference on your progression. This is a very important one for anyone that's doing primary builds. Symbol of Force increases the critical damage on your primary attack by 100%, but that's not too great either. This is viable, but it's not too great. This is viable for skill builds, but then again, for both of these you can just level up the Witch Hunter and the Gladiator respectively to gain skill damage and or skill crit chance, or sorry, skill crit damage and primary crit damage. So I would go Symbol of Essence on Ranger, and I would recommend Symbol of Focus for running any kind of skill build, and likewise any primary build runs Symbol of Essence. The last ones are the tricky ones. As I mentioned in my Everything You Need to Know About Heroes of Hammerwatch video, the last items in the chapel all scale from your attack power rather than your skill power, which means they're the only other thing that scales with primary attack stuff. This also means they proc on hits from items such as Judgment and get applied bonus like stuff on primary, such as, you know, Incendiary Demises plus 40 magic damage on primary attack gets applied to this. So I would say the main factor is you want to think about how fast you attack, and that's kind of how you decide. Divine Strike is really good for anyone that's attacking fast, but what I would do is you look at the thing that's the next highest. So the next highest here is 0.25 seconds. When you're playing Thief, you're attacking way faster than that, so I would take Divine Strike. When you're playing Warlock, you're attacking faster than that, so I would take Divine Strike. Divine Blast, however, has its own advantage in the fact that it's an AoE. You'll never take Divine Blast on any ranged unit. The reason for this is you don't want anyone on top of you in the first place, but on melee people you have to get on top of them, so this actually works in your favor, whereas on a ranged person this wouldn't do too much for you. A Divine Bomb, as far as I know, no one takes this, and Divine Hammer is what you'll usually see skill builds going. I don't know why. I get most of my information from Bleaks, and I know that he goes Divine Hammer on like Sorcerer and some other some other skill builds. I'm not sure if he does it on all of them. I know, like, for example, Warlock, I'm pretty sure goes Divine Strike because Warlock uses a primary so fast. But my assumption is that it has the highest base damage and none of them attack too fast, so what's the point of taking anything else, right? It also goes further than Divine Strike, I believe. So it's got range, damage, and matches the cooldown better, and that's the reasoning that I'm assuming. Next, we'll go into Fountain. I'll show you the 3 configurations that I would generally recommend. There's one that I like to do, and it's called my guaranteed failure, but you will gain a lot of EXP. This is the one I go if I'm just looking to level up, because level ups a lot of times are very important. You get extra maximum health, extra maximum mana. You don't get any damage, but it can help out a lot. You get these stars so you can upgrade more items, stuff like that. So I would say in the Fountain, that build would be basically take everything that you can deal with. Allows you consumables, doesn't really bother you that much. More enemies means more experience. Spicy potions, unless you're used to this is usually an annoyance, so I skip over it. Lethal traps, just avoid traps. -3 luck. I actually haven't played this game in a while, and so I don't know if this still is bugged or not. But if it is bugged, you should always take this. If it isn't, this will affect your evade chance, your crit chance, and all that stuff. It may not be worth the -2. Elite reinforcements. This one, if you're having trouble staying alive and you want to live longer, don't take this one, because this one makes a significant impact on the run. Exhausted ore veins, because you're going to die and you're going to turn off ore drops as well, like the mine shafts. And so when you have those off, there's no way you're going to send them up. You're probably not going to win this run. There's no point. Relentless threats doesn't matter. Enemy overseers, you know, this doesn't do much. Don't turn this on if you have multiple characters, because, or if you're further into the game in general, because class titles make a pretty big impact. But when you're starting out, if for whatever reason you're on like Act 2 or 3 and you haven't, you know, beaten it, this is pretty much a free negative. Agile adversaries, free negative. We're turning this off because we have ore off anyways. You can leave this on if you want potion refills, but field cracks, you won't really be looking for secrets. You don't need items. You don't want this on, and public holiday. And so with that, you get 405% gold and 405% EXP. This is the big one. Your gold's probably going to disappear because you won't clear the run. This is my preset I use for that. You cancel this all out. For a progression run, you're going to want a lot of stuff. First and foremost, the most important thing is you want enemy overseers. It's actually a positive. The reason for this is it generates more mini bosses. Mini bosses have a chance to spawn items, and so they actually help you out rather than hurt you. A lot of this stuff over here is preference. I like taking gentle traps because you take 50% less damage. Topple towers is huge. I hate gargoyles. Safe corridors is also huge. It makes you not have to worry about things. It's your lucky day. If you combo this with it's not your lucky day, it's a 1 cost and it's +2 luck for free. That only means that this only counts if it's still bugged. Plentiful gifts is great. Imps are great for progression. I don't care too much about bigger bottle, although it will make a difference, especially if you get the full apothecary set. Tons of potions is always a good thing. Later on in the game, this won't matter though, because it's pretty much either you're instantly dead or you're fine. Wells have unlimited uses. I don't see a point in this. Abundant shops. This could be okay, but I usually don't run this. Let's see. infrequent threats. Frequent threats isn't really an issue, so this is fine. Mysterious guidance is great. Monoliths are amazing. Glass walks. This is probably the biggest positive you can get. Gets you a lot more items that you wouldn't get normally. It's pretty great. Treasure hunt is pretty great. Smaller spawners makes your life easy, and all this other stuff doesn't really matter. So you can see over here we've built up quite a cost, so we need to add some negatives. Enemy reinforcements doesn't really make an impact. I don't usually use potions. I don't usually use pickups. I pretty much rely on my mana regen over time and my symbol of essence usually. So I will almost always take lousy consumables. Lethal traps just cancels out the other traps, but it costs less, so you actually lose on this. Or I believe so. Actually, no, they just cancel each other out. So if you take this, there's no difference in traps. There's no difference in your favor. So if you're going to take this and this, just don't take either. Elite reinforcements makes a big impact. It makes things a lot harder. You can turn it on, but right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get the cost down enough without turning it off. So I would go relentless threats. I would go agile adversaries. I wouldn't take this normally. I could probably take it here. I don't want to, of course, but I probably could get away with doing that. Minor strike is a great one to get negatives on. The only issue is when you have this on, you can't deposit stuff, so you have to win to make progression in your town and stuff like that. So I'm gonna skip that for now. I don't really care about dry springs. I must always turn dry springs on. Sealed cracks is pretty huge. You're basically losing items here. You don't want to lose items. That hinders your progression. This hinders your progression. This of course makes your life miserable, and this also hinders your progression. So these three you almost never want to take if you're doing progression. However, if you're speed running for ore or something else, you almost always don't need these, so you can just grab them to get more gold. So at this point we're at -8. This is a pretty hefty cost. So what I would recommend is taking elite reinforcements, and our cost gets down to here. So this is my general progression. Take some other stuff, like if I went non-lethal traps, so if I just took both of these off, right, I would have 450 cost. This would be my cheaper progression run, and then I would have one more, which is I turn gentle traps back on, I turn elite reinforcements off, and I turn on minor strike. And this is the other cheaper option. So the difference between this is I have to win to get all my stuff. This one is this one's not going to be as easy as this one, but it's cheaper. That's pretty much the difference between the three, and this is just for generally leveling up.